Screech. The sound of metal scraping on asphalt. Flash. Blinding lights growing larger by the second. And then impact. An enormous force crashed into me, swallowing my entire body. The pain of my body being torn apart made me scream. Arg! I shot upright, gasping for breath. Across from me, a middle-aged man sitting on the opposite bed stared at me blankly. What the did you have a nightmare or something? Where am I? Where do you think? You're in a hospital. A hospital? What the hell is he talking about? I looked around and realized I was in a hospital room. One like I'd only seen on TV. White walls, white ceiling, generic storage cabinets, and rows of patient beds neatly arranged. I was lying in one of the patient beds, my body wrapped in bandages. Confused, I tried to lift my arm but groaned as soon as I moved. A sharp pain shot through my body. Why am I here? I asked the man across from me. He clicked his tongue as if annoyed. Don't you remember? You were in a car accident. A car accident. I don't know all the details. I just overheard the doctors during their rounds. Want me to call a nurse? Yes, please. Hey, nurse. The warrior guy's awake. A young nurse entered, smiling brightly. Warrior Kim, you're finally awake. Are you talking to me? Yes. Just a moment. I'll go get your doctor. Weird. Why are they calling me Warrior Kim? I glanced around, confused, and my eyes caught something behind my bed. A nameplate for patients. M over 22. Warrior Kim. Concussion contusion of anterior chest wall. Warrior Kim. What kind of name is that? That's not my name. Before I could dwell on it, the doctor entered, shining a penlight into my eyes. Pupils are responding well. Can you tell me your name? My name. It's Kim Junsu. Did you change your name recently? According to our records, your name is Warrior Kim. Yes, that's right. The police confirmed it too. What the hell are they talking about? As I tried to wrap my head around what was happening, the nurse pointed to the mini storage cabinet next to the bed. Inside was an old wallet. I opened it, finding a few banknotes, a credit card, and an ID card. When I looked at the ID card, my head spun. Warrior Kim. Those 3 words were clearly printed on the ID, and the face on the ID was disturbingly familiar. It was the exact face of Warrior Kim, the character I'd seen so often on my smartphone screen. The same Warrior Kim I had played as an arcane soul. The scar on the left cheek was gone, and he looked a bit younger, but it was unmistakably him. The doctor nodded. Yes, you are Warrior Kim. Do you know what today's date is? May 1st. I see. The doctor turned his eyes awkwardly toward the wall. There, an electronic calendar displayed the date. It was May 30th. Do you know where you are? In a hospital. And who is the president of the country? What kind of weird questions were these? Even though I found it strange, I answered obediently. Yoon Ju Yul. I've never heard that name before. The doctor asked a few more odd questions, then shook his head. It seems you have short-term memory loss. You were hit head-on by a dump truck, so you're lucky to be in this good of a condition. No internal bleeding, no broken bones. A dump truck. Yes, don't you remember? I frowned as a vague image floated into my mind. The screeching of metal, the approaching lights, and the impact. Ugh, I clutched my head, feeling a sudden surge of pain. The doctor sighed. You'll need to stay hospitalized for a while and undergo further tests. We'll need an MRI and a magic scan as well. A magic what? We'll take care of the formalities first. It says here you don't have any listed guardians? That's right. We tried calling the numbers saved on your phone, but all of them refused to take responsibility. Head over to the admin office first. The doctor left the room after giving his instructions, as if his job was done. The nurse helped me out of bed. Can you stand up? Ugh, yes. I think I can manage. You're lucky. The accident involved several people, but you were the only survivor. Wait, others died? Yes. It was a massive crash. Warrior Kim, please follow me. There's a mini admin office at the nurse's station. Every step I took felt like my body was breaking apart. I forced myself to move, making my way to the nurse's station just a few meters ahead. Even that short walk had me sweating bullets. The nurse left me there, and the admin staff gave me a bored look. What can I help you with? I was told to check in. I was in a car accident and admitted here. Oh, it looks like you haven't been registered yet. What's your name? Kim Jun. Warrior Kim. Can I see your ID? Luckily, the nurse had slipped my wallet into the hospital gown earlier. I handed over the ID, and the admin staff started typing away. You were admitted 3 days ago. Let's see emergency room fees, admission fees, CT scans, X-rays, medications, and meals. Your total comes to 22,370,569 won. TL note. About 17k US dollars. Wait, what? Did I hear that right? 22 million won? Is this some kind of joke? I was in the hospital for 3 days and the bill's over 22 million? This isn't America. TL note. Funny enough. 17,000 for 3 days in a hospital for a car crash incident with head trauma and intensive care would be extremely cheap in the US. Trauma response alone runs around 18,000. I saw a picture of a 3-day stay that ran over 60k. Isn't that a bit steep for 3 days? You don't have insurance listed. Without insurance, it's all out of pocket. What do you mean I don't have insurance? It's not showing up in our system. What about national health insurance? National health insurance? What's that? Suddenly, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Even the nurses nearby were looking at me like I was some kind of lunatic. The admin staff flicked her fingers, beckoning me. Do you have any other insurance? Maybe from the Legion, the Maj Tower, or a religious order, or even Shinwa Life or Jumo Life? I know, I don't. Not only didn't I have it, I hadn't even heard of it. The Legion, Maj Tower, religious order? What the hell are those? Oh no. Suddenly, it hit me. In the Arcane Seoul lore, there was a whole section about this. The 4 factions that ruled Seoul and South Korea. The Legion, the conglomerates, the Maj Tower, and the religious orders. And the insurance names the admin staff mentioned just matched them perfectly. Shinwa and Jumo were part of the 5 major conglomerates in the game. The admin staff eyed me for a moment before speaking. Since you don't have insurance, how would you like to pay? Can I use a credit card? Of course. How many installments would you like? How long can I stretch out interest-free? Interest-free? Where do you think you are? There's no such thing as interest-free payments. I was stunned. No interest-free installments? A chill ran down my spine as a terrible realization began creeping up on me. Trying to suppress my panic, I handed over my credit card. Let's do 12 months. With 12 months, a 49% interest rate applies. So your total will be 33,332,147 won. With monthly payments of 2,777,678 won. Isn't that an insanely high interest rate? 49%? That's nothing. Since we're a hospital, we're being generous. If you were buying a TV or fridge from a corporation, they'd charge 70%. What about legal limits on interest rates? The world felt like it was spinning. The world I knew seemed to be slipping further and further away. After completing the transaction, the admin staff waved my card in the air. We've added orders for further hospitalization and tests. If you want to stay, you'll need to pay upfront. How much? With the MRI, psychiatric evaluation, and magic scan, the tests alone come to over 30 million won. If you stay for another month, it'll be around 170 million won. But I can give you a 10% discount, bringing it down to 160 million. 1 month of hospitalization for 160 million. TL note. About 120k US dollars. This is insane. No, thank you. Then you'll be discharged. Discharged? Right now? Unless you want to stay another day? The daily fee is. No, I'll leave. I'll leave right now. My whole body hurt, and I couldn't make sense of anything. But there was one thing I needed to confirm. Since I was the victim of a car accident, shouldn't there be compensation from the other party? They died. What? And it turns out they were uninsured, so there's no compensation, and their family has renounced all inheritance rights. You're out of options. Isn't there anything from the government? Nope. One curt reply. Everything I thought I knew about how things worked was crumbling in real time. No national health insurance, no coverage for an uninsured truck driver, and no government support for hospital bills. I had nothing left to say. I gathered my things and left the hospital. At least I had somewhere to go. The address on my ID, a tiny boarding house in Silumdong. Squeak. The door to the boarding house creaked as I opened it. It was even more rundown and depressing than the ones in the real world. The communal kitchen was cramped, and a foul stench hung in the air. But at least it was a place to stay. As soon as I stepped into my one pyong roughly 3.3 square meters room, I felt a wave of resignation wash over me. So small. The boarding house I lived in back home was 2 pyong. 2 pyong to 1 pyong. That small difference made the room feel even more suffocating. The mold growing on the walls, The rotting mini desk, everything about this place was awful. Even for a cheap boarding house, this was too much. At the very least, they could have done some wallpapering or replaced the furniture. Bang, bang, bang. Just as I was about to file a complaint, someone banged on the door. Hey, Warrior Kim, you in there? Why, yes, I'm here. Just a moment. As soon as I opened the door, a bulldog-faced landlady shoved her head in. Hey, when are you going to pay this month's rent? You're already 2 months behind. You know what happens if you miss 3 months, right? Forced eviction. Don't I have any deposit left? You used that up ages ago. So when are you going to pay? Are you working? And what's with your clothes? Why do you have bandages all over your face? I got into a car accident. Car accident. Her aggressive demeanor softened for a moment, and she looked surprised. Was it bad? Yes. People died. Geez, so are you getting compensation? No. The other driver didn't have insurance. That's rough. So you've been in the hospital all this time? Ida? Fortunately, the injuries aren't too severe. Well, at least you're okay. Maybe because she heard about the accident. The landlady's tone became noticeably softer. Are you sure you're not hurt anywhere? You're healthy? Yeah, luckily. Good, good. Your body's your asset when you're young. You can't afford to be sick. I bet the hospital bill was sky high though. Do you even have insurance? Without insurance, those bills can bury you. Maybe she wasn't as bad as I thought. She seemed a little more empathetic than her appearance suggested. Insurance? Me? No way. I was supposed to stay for another month, but I left early. What? You just left? If the doctor says you need to stay, you should have stayed. You can't just leave because you don't have money. What else could I do? I had no way to pay. I see. The landlady's eyes darted around as if she was deep in thought. How about I introduce you to a hospital I know? Introduce me? Yeah, it's not run by a licensed doctor, but he's damn good at what he does. All of us old-timers in Silumdong go to him. Remember Mr. Lee in room 207 with liver disease? I sent him to that doctor and he got cured. And the treatment fee? Of course, you still have to pay, but it's way cheaper than a regular hospital. Maybe a third of the cost? Even at a third of the cost, that's still a lot. I just paid 33 million, so a third would be over 10 million won. The landlady smacked her lips like a snake. You know what's the best part? What? He doesn't just take money for payment. Then what does he take? Think about it. There are all sorts of things he'll accept, but the best one is, well, body parts. Body parts. Parts. What could I possibly have to offer? I haven't checked my bank balance, but I'm sure it's empty. The landlady, growing frustrated with my cluelessness, slapped her chest. Are you really this dense? Or are you just pretending? I'm talking about human organs. Human organs. What? You're kidding, right? What else do you have to offer besides that young, healthy body of yours? You're already behind on rent, and you've got a massive hospital debt hanging over your head. Do you want to live like this forever? One way or another, you're going to end up dead. You'd be better off selling a kidney or an eye, paying off your debts, and living without worries. You know how good artificial eyes are these days, right? Even if they're not magical. Optical prosthetics work perfectly fine. Some people even voluntarily replace their own eyes with prosthetics. Jesus Christ. My jaw dropped. This was unbelievable. She's really suggesting I sell my body parts for money? Who the hell is this shady doctor she's talking about? I could feel goosebumps rising all over my skin. Get out. Hey, don't touch me. I'll pay the rent next month. Just leave. Are you sure? I'm recording you. You said you'll pay. Yes, yes. Just go. If you don't pay, I'm evicting you for real. And you know how harsh the court bailiffs can be, right? If you don't want to get dragged into forced labor, you'd better sell something. If not an eye, then maybe a kidney. Just get out. Slam. I finally managed to shut the door. Outside, I could still hear her cursing. She was shouting about how kids these days have no manners and how I ignored her great advice. Eventually, the pounding on the door faded, and I slumped down against the wall, exhausted. This was seriously fucked up. The world of Arcane Soul, the one I knew only from its settings and graphics, was far more messed up than I could have ever imagined. God is dead. Nothing has changed. Humanity worships gold and follows the religion of magical science, enslaving themselves. Those were the opening lines from the Arcane Soul intro, the ones I always skipped through without paying attention. Now I was experiencing them firsthand. An artificial body? If it's so great, why don't you do it yourself? I let out a long sigh. It was time to accept reality. This dingy room didn't even have a mirror. I switched my phone's camera to the front-facing mode. I propped it up against the mini desk, using it as a makeshift mirror. A face, wrapped in bandages, stared back at me, only the eyes, nose, and mouth visible. I started unwrapping the bandages. Once, twice, 3 times. Layer after layer of the bandages fell away, revealing a pale face underneath. It was an ordinary face, except for one glaring feature. A scar on the left cheek. A deep, fresh wound that hadn't fully healed yet, the scab still forming. I knew this face all too well. Though it looked a bit younger, it was the same face I'd seen every day on my smartphone. Warrior Kim, the basic starter character from Arcane Soul, the one who accompanies the player from the tutorial onward. Ha 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 ha. I couldn't help but laugh. Reality felt like a knife stabbing me in the heart. Who could have predicted this? I'd gone to bed feeling triumphant after pulling the heavenly demon, only to wake up as the tutorial character in the game. God damn it. Once I accepted this reality, a fierce sense of urgency kicked in. The world of Arcane Soul was already a messed up place. But if it was anything like what I knew from the game, things would only get worse soon. Ancient gods would awaken, nuclear wars would break out, and dimensional rifts would tear the world apart. If I just sat here doing nothing, I'd die. You die if you're poor, you die if you're weak, you die if you're unlucky. I didn't know exactly how this all happened, but one thing was for sure. I wasn't going to just roll over and die. Even a worm will squirm if it's stepped on. I glared at the reflection of my face on the smartphone screen. Warrior Kim, and the 10,000 hours I had sunk into Arcane Soul. That's the only thing I can rely on now. All right, calm down. I decided not to think too deeply about how I ended up in this world, or why I became Warrior Kim. There's no point. It's an unsolvable problem. Whether some supernatural being, like a god or demon, is playing tricks on me, or whether aliens kidnapped me and shoved me into some strange machine for an experiment. None of that matters right now. What matters most at this moment is survival. I need to stay alive. If I'm not careful, I'll be dead or have my organs harvested in a matter of months. I don't have any money. I glanced at my smartphone, raising an eyebrow. Legion Bank. Balance. 136,711 On top of that, I had for 10,001 bills in my wallet. A total fortune of 170,001. TL note, round US 130. How am I supposed to survive on this? What about the credit card bill and next month's rent? The person you are trying to reach is not answering. Please leave a message after the tone. TSK, your life is pathetic too, huh? I tried calling the contacts saved in the phone, but no one picked up. The class leader, the vice leader, Mr. Choi, and so on. They're probably ignoring the call because they think it's the hospital trying to reach them. I didn't know any of these people anyway. I had no clue what kind of life Warrior Kim lived or what kind of relationships he had. The game's settings weren't that detailed, and there was no information on the smartphone either. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Let's make some money first. Arcane Soul is notorious for being a P2W hell. So, how do you survive without spending? You need money, of course. In-game currency like diamonds or nectar. Especially when you use grinding Warrior Kim, that character was a gold mine. If you filled your for-character party with grinding Kims and went mining, you could earn way more than the typical paying user could. The Jirisan Demon Cave isn't open yet, is it? I wasn't sure. The Jirisan Demon Cave opens after episode 7, but this isn't a game. It's either another reality or a parallel world. So maybe all the dungeons, forbidden zones, and mazes that were patched into the game over time already exist here. Status window. Of course, there was no response. Status. Stats. Character sheet. Character info. Warrior Kim. See, damn it. Trying to cheat my way through failed. If I've been dumped into another world, shouldn't I at least get some cheat skills or a status window? Surely. The knowledge I have from the game isn't completely useless, right? I forced myself to focus, recalling the grinding version of Warrior Kim I used in the past. Not the one I used recently, but the early game version from when I first started playing. This isn't going to be efficient. Alright, let's start with the basics. The Jirisan Demon Cave and Baekdusan Demon Cave are high-level zones you can only enter later. When you're as broke as I am right now, the landfill dungeon is the best place to start. But before that, there's something I need to check first. I grabbed a pen from the desk. Closing my eyes tightly, I jabbed the pen into the back of my hand. Keck! Tears welled up from the sharp pain. But I didn't stop. Still squinting my eyes shut, I stabbed my hand again and again. Thump! Suddenly, my heart gave a powerful beat. My whole body felt like it was on fire. It was as if lava was flowing through my veins, spreading throughout my entire body. When I opened my eyes, I saw that the wound on my left hand was slowly healing. Okay, it worked. If this were a game, a message would have appeared on the screen right about now. Warrior Kim level 0 has acquired the trait, Wound Recovery. It's not regeneration or immortality, just a third-tier common trait. But hey, I'll take what I can get. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Whew, let's try one more thing. I closed my eyes and concentrated. In the game, I would have just tapped a few buttons to accomplish this. But in the absence of a status window, this is what I had to do. Delete it, delete it, delete it. I kept repeating that thought in my head. I wanted to delete the Wound Recovery trait. I wasn't sure if it would work, so I focused intensely on wishing for the trait to disappear. Then, I jabbed the pen into my hand again. Ugh, maybe I should have experimented with a different trait. But there aren't many traits as easy to acquire and as immediate in their feedback as Wound Recovery. Despite the pain, I glanced at my hand. Thankfully, the wound stayed. The first wound had healed completely. This time, I succeeded as well. Phew, I let out a sigh of relief. The trait had successfully been deleted. Don't I regret losing it? Not at all. This is, in fact, the greatest feature and strength of Warrior Kim. The default and tier tutorial character. A blank slate body. Since it's the basic character, it starts with no traits. Other versions of Kim, like Fistfighter Kim, Mage Kim, or Priest Kim, all start with a unique trait. TL note, for those that don't know, Kim is the most common surname in Korea. So it's basically used as a way to say that someone is generic. But Warrior Kim has the most flexibility when it comes to acquiring, changing, and deleting traits. Other characters need diamonds to modify or remove traits, but Warrior Kim has no cost requirements. Acquiring traits also has far more relaxed conditions. This is one of the reasons why, even after pulling R and senior tier characters, I kept Warrior Kim as my main. Thank goodness. It seems the conditions for acquiring traits work the same as they do in the game, which means there's no time to waste. I hastily threw on some clothes and rushed out of the boarding house. The damp alleyway stretched out before me, flickering streetlights barely clinging to life, broken pavement blocks, puddles of water pooled in random spots, heaps of trash piled up everywhere, flies buzzing around the rotting garbage, and somewhere in the distance, the stench of decay. A drunken man staggered toward me, creaking like a wooden puppet. He giggled as he stumbled, his steel jaw and cowwheel teeth grinding audibly with each step. He looked like something out of a nightmare. I instinctively held my breath. Ha ha ha. The drunk chuckled and passed me by. Mr. Lee. That name popped into my head suddenly. Mr. Lee. That's the name I heard earlier today. Remember? The guy in room 207? I introduced him to that doctor to cure his liver disease. He must have paid for the treatment with his jaw, mouth, and teeth. A shiver ran down my spine. What kind of barbaric world is this? If I dawdle any longer, or stand around lost in thought, I'll end up like that too. Shuddering, I took off running, from the narrow alley, to a wider street, then to a main road, and finally into a nearby park. It was only a few hundred meters, but the atmosphere completely changed. Bright streetlights illuminated the park, and people were busy taking their evening strolls. Woof, woof, ha-hee. It looked like a scene straight out of the real world. Dogs playing, kids laughing, people enjoying the evening. It was still early evening, and I started sprinting around the park. Huff, huff, huff. Did Warrior Kim always have such low stamina? I was out of breath in no time. Ignoring the burning in my chest, I kept running. I disregarded breathing techniques and stamina management. I just ran and ran. My lungs felt like they were about to explode, and the world turned yellow. But I forced my legs to keep moving despite feeling like they weighed a ton. I couldn't stop. I had to keep running until I collapsed, my face buried in the dirt. It'd be even better if I ended up in the emergency room, because that's the condition I needed to meet to acquire the trait. What the hell? Watch where you're going. I could barely see where I was going. After bumping into a few people, they started grumbling in irritation. It was clear to anyone watching that I wasn't in a normal state, but nobody bothered to stop or help. They just steered clear of me, thinking I was some kind of weirdo. Ugh. Eventually, I collapsed. I face-planted into the dirt. My nose cracked, and blood began pouring out. Ugh. Mom, that guy's weird. Let's go home. People hurried away from me, and who could blame them? After all, I got up from the ground, nose broken and blood streaming down my face, all while grinning like a lunatic. Who in their right mind would think I was normal? But none of that mattered. I had confirmed that I'd acquired the trait. Vigor. No text appeared on the screen, of course. Instead, my depleted stamina slowly began to recover. The weight in my limbs lifted, and the yellow-tinted world returned to normal. This was the trait I gave to every early game grinding warrior Kim. It's just a common trait, but for grinding, it's invaluable. With it, you could mine for 24 hours straight without needing to rest. And now, I checked out the exercise equipment in the park. Thankfully, the one I was looking for was there, the chest pull machine. It was unoccupied, so I sat down and cranked the weight up to the maximum before pulling. Ugh, I couldn't do it properly. For a warrior class character, this body sure is weak. Just one pull. I only needed to pull the maximum weight once. Just one time, straining my entire body. I barely managed to drag the weights down. The moment I completed the pull, a cool sensation spread through my muscles, and they bulged, suddenly feeling much stronger. And then, the weights became lighter. Success. I'd acquired the strength trait. Now, there was only one more thing left to do in the park. After wiping off my sweat, I wandered around the park at a leisurely pace. My eyes scanned the ground like a hawk, occasionally brushing through the grass or kicking up the dirt. There has to be one here. In Arcane Soul, every park contained this item. If you walked any character around for long enough, they'd pick it up randomly. Before long, I found it. A 501 coin. Suddenly, my eyes adjusted, and I could see several glowing blue points scattered across the park. All right, now we're talking. Treasure hunter. For grinding, especially mining, it's an absolutely essential trait. Without it, no matter how good a dungeon you enter or how high level the monsters you defeat, your loot won't be efficient. Unfortunately, I wasn't done preparing yet. There was still one more thing left to do. A task I really didn't want to do. Do I seriously have to? But still, it's better than stabbing my hand with a pen. Trying to comfort myself with that thought, I made my way back to the alley near the boarding house. I stood in front of a suitable pile of trash. Mro, a one-eyed cat that had been rummaging through the garbage, sprinted away. I watched it disappear before instinctively pinching my nose. The foul stench of rot and sourness stabbed at my nostrils. Ugh, gross. I reached out toward the pile of trash. Closing my eyes, I dug through the garbage. The moment I felt something sticky and unpleasant touch my hand, I grabbed it and smeared it all over my face. I screamed internally. I hadn't lived an easy life, but I'd never done anything like this. I worked factory jobs, sure. I even did construction work. But this was a whole new level of disgusting. God damn it. This trait was also essential. It wasn't just about making more money. It was a matter of survival. I had to endure it. I had to endure it. It worked. After a few more smears, the smell began to disappear. Not completely, mind you, but the nauseating, vomit-inducing, make you want to die stench had diminished to the point where it was more like sniffing fish at a seafood market. Compared to before, it felt like I was in heaven. I cursed under my breath and threw the rest of the trash away. Ugh, gross. I rubbed my face with the clothes I was wearing and tossed them too. The fourth trait one had acquired was contamination resistance. Without it, if you go grinding, the magical contamination can render you incapacitated for days after a single day of work. If you're unlucky, it could even kill you or cause severe mutations that land you in a temple for healing. Phew, the hard part was over. The only things left were extraction and synthesis. Both were easy to acquire. I headed to a nearby convenience store, shamelessly picking up a toothpick holder. That homeless guy reeks. I ignored the insults thrown at me from behind. These were my badges of honor, damn it. After taking a shower at the boarding house, I opened up the toothpick holder. I carefully stacked the toothpicks on the desk, one by one. Surprisingly, this was harder than I thought. I had to create a delicate structure, but even a slight breath or the tiniest tremble in my hand would cause it to collapse. At least it's better than digging through trash, better than that. I suppressed the urge to give up and kept at it for hours. After much trial and error, I finally managed to finish it. As soon as I completed the crude toothpick house, my vision blurred, and I could see faint, glowing lines connecting the toothpicks. Got it. Next, I began removing the toothpicks one by one, just like a game of Jenga, being careful not to knock the whole thing over. If the house collapsed before I acquired the trait, I'd have to start from scratch. I concentrated so hard I felt like my eyes would pop out of their sockets. One by one, then another, and another. How many times did I repeat the process? Just before the house fell apart, the world briefly turned red, then shifted back to normal. And now, there was a faint red glow on some of the toothpicks. Finally, it was done. Everything was done. The initial grinding version of Warrior Kim was complete. Vigor to help with stamina recovery, strength to boost power and physical attacks, treasure hunter to detect rare loot, contamination resistance to withstand magical pollution, extraction to harvest materials instantly, synthesis to combine materials into higher tier items. The perfect early game grinding Warrior Kim. It would be perfect if I could add a few more. Unfortunately, that's impossible. Each character is limited to 6 traits. 6 it's 6, right? Suddenly, I had a thought. What if there's a chance? There's no way, right? That would be totally broken. But still, I picked up the pen. Huff. I took a deep breath and jabbed the pen into my hand again. Hard enough to see sparks in my vision. Kook. A groan slipped out. Why did I do this again? I must be out of my mind. If I ever pull this stunt again, I swear I'll... Oh, come on. Despite all that fuss, the wound remained. It was a complete waste of effort. A total waste of time. I sighed briefly and thought, it would have been nice to still have the wound recovery trait. It's not a great trait, but at least the pain would have gone away faster. Maybe I stabbed myself a little too hard because my hand really hurt. If this were the real world, I'd probably be heading to the emergency room right now. I wondered if I'd broken a bone or something when, suddenly, I felt the strength drain out of my body. Startled, I looked down at my hand and saw something strange. My left hand, the skin on the back of my hand, where I had stabbed myself with the pen, was slowly healing. It was slow, but it was definitely healing. It felt like lightning struck in my head. This is huge. Think about it. What if I could have an unlimited number of traits? Even if they're just basic, common traits, I'd still be unstoppable. While others are stuck with 6, I'd be carrying around hundreds, no, thousands of traits. My heart pounded in my chest. Let's see. I turned off the light in my boarding room. Switching on my phone's flashlight, I held it directly to my eyes. The brightness stung, causing my eyes to tear up, but at the same time, the dark room around me seemed to get a little clearer. Bright eyes trait. Got it. I clenched my fist in triumph, but it was too early to celebrate. Through my enhanced vision, I could see that the veins that had bulged across my hand, thanks to the strength trait, were now shrinking and disappearing. I stared down at my hand and arm in confusion. The muscular arms I'd gotten from strength reverted to their original scrawny state. What they are? Wait a second. Now that I thought about it, my body had been feeling unusually heavy for a while, like the day after a grueling forced march in the army. If I still had the vigor trait, I wouldn't feel like this at all. Of course, it makes sense. Unlimited traits? No way. Turns out, when I gain a new trait, one of the old ones gets overwritten. Still, it's a big deal. I had recovered the wound recovery trait without using a pen. I could gain traits without special requirements. I closed my eyes and focused. Telekinesis, telekinesis, telekinesis. Just in case, I gave it a shot, but as expected, nothing happened. This led me to form a hypothesis about this new ability. Acquiring new traits works just like an arcane soul. But after that, things are different. I can retrieve any trait I've already had, and I can do it at will. I deleted wound recovery and bright eyes, then restored vigor and strength. It was effortless. As soon as I willed it, the traits switched automatically. My enhanced vision faded, the wound stopped healing, and in return, a refreshing sensation filled my body, and my arms bulked up again. Ha. What should I call this? Trait switch. Trait swapping. It may not be as ridiculous as having unlimited traits, but even this trait switch has incredible potential. It means I can freely utilize all the different versions of Warrior Kim that I've built over the past 10,000 hours of gameplay. And does the trait switching take time? Not at all. I just have to think about it. With practice, it won't even take a second, probably less than 0.1 seconds. In the middle of a battle, I could switch to pure tank Kim for defense and then swap to max DPS Kim for attacking. Phew, this is massive, a total game changer. The only downside is that I don't have the luxury of leisurely gathering traits. Money is the problem, money is the enemy. Even if I want to collect traits, I'll have to do it while making money. Well, that's fine. This ability speeds up my plans significantly. Originally, I was resigned to just grinding for a while, laying low in mining. But things might move faster than I expected. First, I need some sleep. As I gathered traits, time had passed, and the night was now deep. I lay down on the bed and tried to force myself to sleep. Even though sleep wouldn't come easily, I kept my eyes shut and waited for time to pass. After tossing and turning well past 3 a.m., I must have eventually drifted off. When I opened my eyes again, the sky was already beginning to brighten. Where should I start? In the game, it was simple. I'd just pick any level 0 dungeon and dive right in. But here, according to the lore, the government manages the dungeons. Level 0 dungeons are usually located near cities. That means it won't be easy for just anyone to enter. And sure enough, when I searched for a level 0 dungeon on my phone, I found that dungeons could only be accessed by those with a permit. If you entered without permission, you'd be fined. Looks like I'll need to start as a cleaner. Becoming a cleaner wasn't easy either. According to what I found online, there are 3 ways to become a dungeon cleaner. First, a local government job posting. Second, registering with the Cleaner Association. And third, through a day labor office. The public job option is tough. Even though it's called cleaner, it's technically a government job, with solid benefits and allowances, so the competition is fierce. The Cleaner Association isn't much better. After modernization, the association became a powerful interest group. And without the right connections, getting in is nearly impossible. I let out a small sigh. Guess it's the day labor office again. If you've ever worked construction, you'll be familiar with day labor offices. Thinking about my experiences with them in the real world made me grind my teeth. But realistically, I had no other option. Luckily, there was a small labor office nearby. When I walked in, everyone inside turned to look at me. Faces worn down by life, tired, slouched shoulders, unkempt hair. A faint, musty smell hung in the air. Men, women, kids who looked like they were still in high school, and even seniors well past retirement age all sat there, each one slightly warped, either biologically mutated or with magic-engineered prosthetics grafted onto their bodies. They all stared at me. What's this? A newbie? He looks young. Reminds me of that rookie we had last week. Same look. Oft. One of them, a skinny guy who looked to be in his early 20s, scoffed. His legs were twisted in a strange way. He had a small e-cigarette in his mouth, and it emitted a strange, neon-colored light as it puffed out teal smoke. I narrowed my eyes at him. I know who he is. Artir Rodir. He's a superhuman born with deer-like legs that grant him exceptional agility. And thanks to his backstory of using drugs from a young age, he has a high tolerance for doping. Judging by the fact that he's here, though, he probably hasn't awakened as a superhuman yet. Sensing my gaze, Rodir glared at me. What the hell are you looking at? First meeting and you're already speaking informally? Then again, what can you expect from a drug addict? It's not like his personality's going to be great. He's only our tier. Anyway, I got him a few times in the game, but he wasn't useful, so I always scrapped him for resources. Erasing him from my mind, I walked over to the reception desk. The girl at the desk smiled brightly. Hello, welcome to Choi's top labor office. How can I help you today? I heard you help people find jobs. Oh, did someone refer you to us? I just found you online. The receptionist smiled as if she understood what was going on. Then she handed me a form. Please fill this out first. Sure. Several pens were attached to the desk, not with the usual spring cord like in the real world, but with thin yet sturdy chains, as if someone might steal them. I chuckled at the thought and started filling out the form. Job request form. Name, Warrior Kim. Contact number, XXXYZZZZ. Address, Guanacu, Silame A. Roby Begil, CC Boarding House, Room 207. Preferred industry, agriculture, forestry, fishing, construction, logistics, security, cleaning, purification. As I filled out the form, my eyes lingered on the last part, cleaning and purification. I checked purification instead of cleaning. When I handed the form back, the receptionist smiled knowingly. So, you're aware of what purification involves? Of course. It's dungeon cleaning, right? TSK, TSK. There goes another one, marching off to die. I heard a few tongues clicking behind me. The receptionist, still smiling, handed me another form. You know purification isn't easy, right? And it's dangerous. Obviously. Please read through this and sign at the bottom. Just remember, no take-backs later. Application for magic purification participation. Body contamination consent form. Body responsibility agreement. Acknowledgement of terms and conditions. The forms were full of legal jargon, but the main points were clear. I would bear all responsibility for myself if I contracted a magic illness due to contamination, if my body mutated, or, in the worst case scenario, if I turned into a corrupted creature. Choice top labor office would not be held responsible. There was also a clause about a 20% fee, no lunch or snacks provided, and mandatory private insurance enrollment. Wow, this is a new level of shady. The so-called for major insurances are nothing like the ones in the real world. They're all private insurance companies, and the labor office has partnerships with these no-name insurers. You're required to enroll in their plans. They'll deduct that amount from your pay. But hey, at least they're offering insurance, right? Yeah, right. They'll probably do everything in their power not to pay out. But there's no helping it. In my current situation, I'll have to put up with it. Any other labor office would likely have the same terms. After finishing the paperwork, I handed it back to the receptionist, who immediately put it away. All set. You'll now meet with the manager. Manager, we've got a new purification worker. Send them in. The manager's office was past the reception desk, down a long, narrow hallway. It was surprisingly spacious. It was almost bigger than the waiting room. On one side stood an enormous wooden desk, and the sofa in front of it looked soft and comfortable. Behind the desk sat a man with a completely bald head, smoking a cigarette. Manager Choi Sun-soo. He glanced up at me with just his eyes. They weren't normal eyes. A strange, oily sheen glimmered in his pupils. HM. He scratched his cheek. That's when I noticed that part of his cheek was made of steel. It had an odd grid pattern etched into it. A newbie, huh? Yes. He's here for purification work. Purification's good. Take a seat. So, your name's Warrior Kim? Yes, I'm Warrior Kim. The manager lowered his head to glance at the forms. You live nearby. That's why I came here. You've made the right choice. It's always better to have local work, right? There's nothing like face-to-face interaction for trust. I can tell by looking at your good physique, sharp eyes. You'll do well at magic purification. So, which temple do you go to? I don't go to one. Well, that won't do. You can't leave magic contamination untreated. You need to regularly donate to a temple and get purification. Should I introduce you to a temple I know? His tone was a strange mix of formal and informal. I shook my head lightly. No, thank you. I'll figure it out. Well, do what you like. Have you done any purification work before? No, this is my first time. First time, I see. Not part of any team, either? No. Well, you're in luck. I can put you in a team with an opening. The team leader's been doing this for over 10 years and is one of the best in the business. That's great, isn't it? But there's one problem. A problem. The team leader is picky. He only takes members with at least 3 years of experience. I knew where this was going. The manager and the team leader wanted a bribe. Either that or they wanted to adjust the fee structure. It's laughable. Not only do they take 20% of the fee, but now they want more for insurance and bribes. I stiffened my expression. I don't have anything to give. HMM. No need to give it right away. You're here to learn, right? Think of it as paying tuition. Slip the team leader a little extra, and you'll be fine. After a year or two, you'll have enough experience to join another team or even negotiate better terms. Ah, I see. So you want me to work for free for a year? My expression hardened further. I'm sorry, but I really need money now. I'd be fine joining a team with less experienced members. You're turning down this great opportunity? Have you lost your mind? Do you know how dangerous dungeon cleaning is? And you're prioritizing money over joining a skilled team? You're going to get yourself killed. Please, I'm asking you. HMPH. The manager gave me a dissatisfied look, but beneath the surface, I could see the flicker of something greedy in his eyes. Are you really that desperate? Yes. Well, in that case, let me suggest something else. You've heard of temporary teams, right? No, I haven't. They're teams we throw together on the spot, based on the number of workers we need for a job. It's not easy work, but since there's no team leader taking a cut, the pay's better. What do you think? Interested? The manager and I locked eyes. On the surface, he looked like a kind, neighborhood uncle, but I could see the gleam in his eyes, the same look I'd seen countless times in the real world. Sucker. He was planning to take advantage of me. Even if I joined a temporary team, he probably figured he could squeeze as much, if not more, out of me as he could from a regular team. Would that be possible in a level 0 dungeon? Definitely. I knew exactly where the manager planned to send me. I grinned. I'd be happy to join. So, this bastard's our new recruit? Rodir gave me a once-over, clearly unimpressed. Didn't like what he saw? Well, the feeling's mutual. Don't mutate. If you do, I'll kill you. With those words, he closed his eyes. I shrugged and found a seat near the front of the bus. Behind me, the other men started whispering. Think he'll mutate right away? He's a newbie, but he should last a few rounds. After the job's done, who cares? As long as he takes the suppressant, he'll be fine. We just need to get paid. Damn it. All this for a few 100,000. What the hell are we doing? People like us don't get jobs that pay this well often. If you hate it so much, why not try becoming a superhuman? Hi, envy Rodir. The men cast glances at Rodir. Their situations were all similar. Each had a part of their body either mutated grotesquely or replaced with strange prosthetics. One guy had hedgehog-like quills instead of hair. Another had 8 metal tentacles instead of legs, like some kind of octopus. One was half zombified, but there was one key difference. One man, looking envious, muttered, I heard Rodir took a mana reflection scan last time, and you could faintly see the mana circuits. No way, really? Yeah, that's what he said. It wasn't fully visible, though. If it was, he'd be at the superhuman tower, getting his level 1 certification. Lucky bastard. Even if he's not level 1, being 0.9 is something to brag about. Life's unfair. Some of us spend months in this hellhole just to ruin our bodies, while others slowly get stronger. You're just realizing life's unfair now? You should have studied your ass off and gotten into a magic university, dumbass. What was I supposed to do if I wasn't smart enough? When your mana circuits are fully established and you unlock traits, that's when you become level 1. I glanced at Rodir with renewed interest. He really is something. According to the lore of Arcane Soul, a level 1 superhuman has a total combat power equivalent to a trained rifleman. A level 2 superhuman is on par with heavily armed special forces. So, that skinny guy up there is just a bit weaker than a soldier with a rifle. Doesn't sound impressive? You're dead wrong. Having the combat power of an assault rifle with just your bare hands means you're already a walking weapon. And it's not like superhumans go into battle unarmed. They load up with all kinds of magic tech gear and firearms. Once he soaks up some mana and unlocks his traits, he'll definitely be a superhuman. No wonder he's an R-tier character. A moment later, the driver entered the bus. He glanced at me in the front seat, wrinkling his nose before tossing a plastic bag my way. You're the rookie, right? This is the suppressant. Make sure to inject yourself at the end of each day. If you don't, you'll die. People at the bottom of the barrel sure don't waste words. I didn't bother replying and took the bag. Inside were to 1 cc syringes and a 2 ccm pool of medicine. The suppressant. The labor office manager had explained it to me yesterday. We're working 3 days straight, right? 3 days of continuous purification. For ordinary people, that's enough to cause serious damage. That's why, at the end of each day, you inject the suppressant to keep the mana contamination in check until you can deal with it. After the job's over, whether you rush to a temple for purification, drink holy water, or find some other way, that's up to you. But I won't need it, thanks to my combination of contamination resistance and vigor traits. If it ever gets too dangerous, I can just swap in a few more relevant traits for extra protection. That's the beauty of Trait Switch. I shoved the plastic bag into my backpack. The pack was already stuffed with water bottles and kimbap, but I made it fit. The driver took his seat. VRRRM. The bus's engine roared to life. It sounded more like a tractor than the sleek magic tech cars we'd seen whizzing by earlier. It's running on a diesel engine. Rodir, sitting right behind the driver, grumbled. When are they going to get a new bus? How many years have we been using this antique? You know how our boss is. He won't even part with a 101 coin without whining about it. I just need to become a superhuman and renew my contract already. Oh, absolutely. Once you become a superhuman, The boss will set you up with an apartment and even get you a personal assistant, he promised. You swear that's true? Of course. Just hurry up and level up. The driver was practically kissing up to Rodir. His attitude toward me and the other men was completely different. Rodir snorted and closed his eyes again. After a while, the truck pulled up in front of a massive concrete structure. Metropolitan Landfill No. 1. A rusty sign clung to a skeletal iron tower, creaking in the wind. Of course, this place. The very spot I had in mind from the beginning, back in the early days of the game, before Jirsan or Bekduzen dungeons were available. I used to send my grinding warrior Kim party here for auto farming. Here we are again. I can't believe I'm back. Money is the real enemy. The driver pulled out his smartphone and made a call. A long while later, a man stepped out of the concrete structure. Jan. He was wearing an ID badge, clearly a government employee. He lazily scanned the group, then handed a keycard to Rodir. You're from Manager Choice Team, right? Thanks again for the hard work. A small post-it note was stuck to the card. Rodir took one look at it and frowned. 5 zones this time? Isn't more work a good thing? I guess so, but don't worry about it. Should be smooth sailing as always. The government worker walked off with all the enthusiasm of a slug. Rodir scowled at the post-it note, then glanced around. When his gaze landed on me, he sighed heavily. When he looked at the other men, his expression turned even more serious. Finally, he glanced at Hedgehog Head, and his face twisted in disgust, like crumpled tissue paper. Mr. Kim. Yes, Rodir, sir. You're staying behind. What? What do you mean, staying behind? It's too dangerous. Be honest with me, did you skip your last purification? You're too contaminated. One wrong move and you'll be done for. Not just a mana illness, but full-blown mutation. Everyone's faces turned grim. The mood darkened, but Hedgehog Head just chuckled. Heh, Rodir, you know my situation. I do. But is it worth risking your life? Rodir, what I'm scared of more than mutating is the debt collectors coming for me on Saturday. You know what happens if I don't pay up, right? They'll crack my skull open and take it. Hedgehog Head thrust his head forward. His unusual hair was likely fused with his skull. That's why the debt collectors wanted it. Rodir crossed his arms, scrutinizing Hedgehog Head. So, you're going in no matter what? Yes. With 500,000, I can pay off some of the principal and interest, and still have enough for a drink. If I lose my skull and get screwed over, what kind of life is that? Even if it kills me, I've got to do this. It really might kill you. I knew the risks when I signed up for this job. Hedgehog had tried to laugh it off, but his trembling hands betrayed him. The other men cursed under their breath. Goddamn, screw this world. I wish it would all just go to hell already. Fine, do whatever you want. If you die, that's on you, not me. Anyone else want to back out? Rodir's gaze flicked to me for a second. The question in his eyes was clear. You're really not leaving? I ignored it. I was in just as much of a bind. If I didn't pay my rent or credit card bill, who knew what would happen to me? If the landlady was right, forced labor might be the least of my worries. Things could get much worse than that. Let's go. We passed through the small door. Darkness greeted us. Drip, drip. The inside was like a massive bunker, entirely encased in concrete. It was damp. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, forming puddles here and there. Mold covered most surfaces, and mushrooms grew in the corners, making it feel more like a natural cave than a man-made structure. And the smell, it was unbearable. It was like walking into a decaying garbage dump. The stench of rot and filth was thick in the air, making it hard to breathe. J13 zone. Rodir took the lead, guiding us with a sense of familiarity. We walked down narrow corridors, turned sharp corners, and eventually arrived at our destination. J13. A rusted metal plate marked the zone, and beneath it, a dim red light flickered weakly. Ugh, the dust. Huff. Rodir blew on the control panel, sending a cloud of dust flying into the air. As if on cue, the other men started rummaging through their bags, pulling out gas masks and scarves. Hedgehog Head, halfway through strapping on his gas mask, glanced over at me. You didn't bring anything? No. FMM, should I lend you something? I'll pass. Suit yourself. You're going to regret it. This stuff's lethal. A gas mask isn't going to stop mana contamination. Well, yeah, but it makes people feel better. Forget it. Do what you want. Mana contamination isn't like poison gas. There's no way a cheap gas mask or scarf would make a difference. Deer and the others heard what I said but chose to ignore it. They wrapped themselves up in their makeshift protection, even though it was pointless. Beep. Deer swiped the keycard, and the door slowly groaned open. Creak. A foul stench hit us the moment the door slid apart. Thick, black smoke curled out from inside, making everyone recoil. Shit. Damn it. That's bad. This is going to be rough. It was mana contamination. Ever since rapid urbanization and industrialization took off, mana contamination has become a serious issue. In megacities like this one, negative emotions, lower dimensional mana, and pollutants merge together to create something toxic. If left untreated, it could escalate into a full-blown disaster. Modern urban planning had evolved to focus heavily on mana contamination control, and this landfill, which would have been just a garbage dump in the real world, was now repurposed as a mana waste processing facility. This is gonna be hell. Everyone, get ready. The men pulled out their shovels. I did the same. I had spent a good chunk of my remaining money on this gear: my bag, water, kimbap, and this shovel. My bank account, already low, was now dangerously empty. Let's do this. Clang. Deer swiped the keycard again at the second control panel, and the massive steel door screeched open. Whoosh. Immediately, a cloud of dense mana contamination spewed out, so thick it almost looked like fog. Visibility dropped to barely an arm's length. Through the haze, I could see dark, slimy forms oozing out from the shadows. Contaminated slimes. Their combat ability was laughable, barely on par with a stray cat. But they were terrifying for a different reason. The men began to panic. Hold your breath. Hold it. HNNGG. Hurry up. Get to work. Let's go. Shovel hard. The men at the front started shoveling frantically. The contaminated slimes jiggled and quivered under each strike. There was no real damage being done. Instead, they were simply shoveling away chunks of the slime's body, scattering it in every direction. Nothing yet. Keep going. Get the mana core. Hurry. There's only one way to kill a contaminated slime. You have to find and destroy the mana core inside its body. Obviously, this is easier said than done. The slime's body is as black as tar, and the mana core is no bigger than a fingernail, making it nearly impossible to find. That's why we used shovels. By shoveling away enough of its body, you'd eventually scatter the mana core. Once the core gets displaced, the connection breaks and the slime dies. Splurt. Slosh. The men grunted as they swung their shovels, struggling against the slimy mess. Sweat poured down their foreheads, turning black from the mana contamination. I even noticed hedgehog heads' quills growing sharper and starting to take on a metallic sheen. Was I imagining it? Deer was going wild with his shovel. He was faster than the others, easily twice their speed. But that was it. He wasn't a warrior type or even a reinforced type. Deer, a pre-awakening agility-based mutant, wasn't cut out for this kind of work. He wasn't even level 1 yet. Step aside. At this rate, we'd be here all day. Seeing no other option, I stepped forward. Deer glared at me. What do you think you're doing, rookie? Shut up and watch. You ever been in the army? You call that shoveling? As a former sergeant with construction experience, this was child's play. I gripped the shovel firmly and drove it deep into the slime's body. Gurgle. The disgusting squelch that followed made my skin crawl. Ignoring it, I stomped down, driving the shovel even deeper until it disappeared up to the handle. Then, with a grunt, I yanked it out and flung the slime forward. Holy crap. With precise, efficient movements, I flung a massive chunk of slime far ahead, almost 5 times more than the others had been able to manage. The awe in the air quickly turned into shock. Whoosh. The slime began to collapse in on itself, dissolving into black smoke. What the? No way. He killed the slime in one hit. Of course, I did. With the treasure hunter trait, I could clearly see the faint blue glow of the mana core inside the slime's body. Sometimes, I could even spot hidden loot or consumable items mixed in with the debris. Not often, but it happened. No freaking way. Is this real life? Must be beginner's luck. Yeah, no way a newbie like him could pull that off intentionally. Wrong. I could wipe out slimes all day long, but instead, I chose to pretend I was just a lucky rookie. Even though I could see the blue glows of the mana cores all around me, I deliberately avoided them, half-heartedly shoveling slime chunks away. No need to show all my cards just yet. Still, my pace was fast. I was doing the work of 5 men by myself. Wham! Wham! Slime debris scattered like water under my shovel. Thanks to my efforts, the contaminated slimes in J13 were wiped out in no time. It took us just 30 minutes. That was several times faster than normal. The men's jaws dropped open. Am I dreaming? This is crazy. Totally insane. What the heck? You really do live long enough to see everything. Hedgehog Head's hands trembled. Are you a superhuman? I quickly turned my head. The men's eyes were practically glowing. That word had tremendous power. Superhuman. Even Rodeer, who had been stiff as a board, swallowed dryly. Hey, are you really a superhuman? No. Then how the hell can you do something like that? I told you. I just shrugged. I served in the army. Oh, wait, are you from the Legion? The Western Legion? Or maybe the Eastern Legion? If he's Legion, then it makes sense. This world is similar to the one I knew in many ways, but it has its differences too. One of those differences is the military. Unlike the Korea I came from, this world uses a voluntary enlistment system. The shortage of manpower is supplemented by 2 legions. These powerful private military companies, formed by warrior-class superhumans, act as both profit-driven organizations and influential power groups within the country, even holding some degree of local autonomy. Let's just get back to work. Whack, whack. I wandered around, collecting the mana cores from the shattered slime fragments. The pieces with mana cores were still squirming, trying to regenerate, so gathering them wasn't difficult. The men stood up and helped me too. We should give all the mana cores to this guy. Yeah, let's do that. If it wasn't for him, we'd be in deep shit. They're not even worth that much anyway. In the past, even level 0 mana cores were considered valuable resources, but not anymore. These days, all you can power with level 0 mana cores are things like TVs or refrigerators, and it's far cheaper to just pay the electric bill than to bother with expensive magic tech devices. The men gathered the level 0 mana cores and handed them to me. Rodeer was the only one who refused to give his up. These are mine. He had only killed 2 slimes. It wasn't much compared to what I had done, but it looked like he was determined to keep them. Seeing him roughly stuff the level 0 mana cores into his bag, the other men took a step back. HMPH. Whatever. Do as you like. It was obvious that Rodeer wasn't in a good mood. His stiff back as he turned away said it all. I chuckled inwardly. What a child. He's upset because he didn't get the respect he thinks he deserves as the leader? Well, it doesn't matter. We'll part ways in a few days anyway, so I wasn't going to waste energy worrying about him. In total, I received 21 level 0 mana cores. Trash to most people, but treasures to me. I bowed my head with sincere gratitude. Thank you. Thank us. We should be thanking you. Yeah, thanks to you. This job was way easier, much easier. Exactly. Without you, we'd be covered in sweat and drowning in mana contamination by now. Even their tone and the way they addressed me had changed. I smirked quietly to myself and sat down, leaning back against the concrete wall. Let's wrap this up and move on. We've got one more zone to clean today. Ugh, I'm gonna die. My lungs feel like they're melting. Damn it. If it weren't for that gambling, I wouldn't be stuck in this mess. The men grumbled as they settled down, sitting in a loose circle against the wall. Rodeer, however, distanced himself and lay down far away from the rest of us. After taking one look at me, sitting there without any protective gear, he took off his scarf and gas mask and started breathing deeply. Clearly, he felt the need to compete with me. I ignored him and closed my eyes. I've never practiced deep breathing or meditation, but I tried to focus my mind on my belly button and take the longest breaths I could. Inhale, exhale. Long, slow breaths echoed in my ears, and as I did, the contaminated mana tickled my lungs. No, it stabbed at them. The sensation of my lungs being invaded by foreign mana, twisting my heartbeat out of rhythm, it was sickening. Whew. I consciously puffed out my chest. I focused on absorbing as much mana as possible with each breath, and after a while, I felt a warmth spreading to my stomach, causing my entire body to itch. Acquired the trait, mana absorption. When I opened my eyes, I could see a mass of black smoke gathering around me. The entire J13 zone had become noticeably brighter. More accurately, some of the contaminated mana had been purified. Eek! Rodeer suddenly bolted outside and began vomiting violently. Oh, Rodeer, are you okay? Get a hold of yourself. Hold your breath. Hold it. What did you do? Why the hell did you take off your gas mask? You're gonna kill yourself, Rodeer. I lightly shook my head. Did he think he could compare to me? with my contamination resistance minimizing the harmful effects of mana contamination, and my vigor replenishing my lost stamina. Besides, Warrior Kim was a warrior class superhuman, even though I hadn't awakened yet. Warrior class superhumans have the highest contamination limits among the 4 major superhuman classes. Rodir was an enhanced type, so there was no comparison. Foo ha! I took even deeper breaths, accelerating the absorption of contaminated mana. In truth, getting rid of the contaminated slimes was just the appetizer. The real work was absorbing the contaminated mana. To put it simply, we were human filters. We were thrown into these contamination zones to absorb the mana until we hit our limit. That's what dungeon cleaners did. It was a bottom-tier job, even in a world as rotten as this one. You wurg, wah, cough, cough. The men rushed outside one by one, vomiting, sweating, and even having diarrhea. It was chaos. No wonder it smelled so bad. I thought the stench of decay when we first entered was coming from the environment, but it was all them. Hedgehog had returned after puking outside, looking at me with bleary eyes. Huff huff. You okay, rookie? I'm fine. How we've really got a future superhuman here. Hedgehog had glanced at Rodir and me nervously. Rodir, clearly annoyed, shouted at him. The hell are you looking at? And nothing, Rodir, sir. Startled, Hedgehog head backed up against the wall. I stared at the back of his head for a moment. It wasn't my imagination. His quills had grown at least twice as long as before, and they now had a metallic sheen, reflecting the dull fluorescent light above. A few hours later, after all the contaminated mana had been absorbed, the green light flicked on. The men cheered with bright smiles. Holy crap, we're already done. We usually have 2 more hours left at this point. It's all thanks to the rookie holding out for so long. Thank you. Seriously, rookie, check out my hair. Still not sharp yet? I think you've got a bit more time. You're amazing, rookie. With you here, we'll get through today's work no problem. The men bowed repeatedly, showering me with praise. It felt a bit over the top, but I could tell things weren't as good as they seemed. Creak creak. My fist wasn't closing properly. The contaminated mana in Zone J13 was far denser and more toxic than I'd anticipated. Even with contamination resistance, my body Warrior Kim's body was reaching dangerous levels of mana contamination. Should I use the suppressant? The original plan was to avoid using the suppressant, but thanks to the mana absorption trait, I'd absorbed far more mana than expected. I decided to think about it later and stood up. Let's move to the next zone. Yes, rookie. The dungeon cleaning proceeded smoothly. In the next zone, we took just 30 minutes to deal with the contaminated slimes. After that, we spent a few more hours inside, breathing in the contaminated mana. Ugh, ooh, you eek. The men's groans grew louder. At this point, vomiting, diarrhea, and sweating were the least of their worries. They were now bleeding from their eyes, noses, and mouths. Their exposed skin was covered in rashes and boils. Their prosthetic limbs were falling off, and their mutated bodies were becoming even more grotesque. Rodir was no exception. His already twisted legs had swollen to twice their size, twitching like those of a mutated horse. Hoo-foo. Luckily, it was all over before their transformations progressed further. Ding! A pleasant chime echoed as the green light flickered on. The men let out sighs of relief from all around. Thank God. I thought I was gonna die. Dying would have been a mercy. We don't have time to sit around. Let's head back to the bus. Yeah, let's get out of here. We slowly trudged back through the concrete structure, but we couldn't leave yet. The only place we could go was the parking lot and the restroom, and shower facilities off to the side. When I asked why we couldn't leave, Hedgehog Head, scratching at the scaly patches on his face, explained, because of quarantine. We have to run the mana purifiers and contamination scanners at least once. And why is that? Come on, you know how it is. These government workers have been lazy for ages. They'll run the machines once, claim they ran them 3 times on the paperwork, and pocket the difference. A perfect combination of laziness and greed. After a quick rinse in the showers, I dried off. Strangely, there wasn't a single bar of soap or bottle of shampoo to be found. They're cutting costs here too. Cursing silently, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. What a mess. My face was covered in scales, like fish skin. My hair had mutated, splitting into Y-shaped strands at the ends. Even my eyes had a slick sheen, like oil floating on water. Still, this was nothing compared to Hedgehog Head, who now looked like a human porcupine, or roe deer, whose legs had swollen to twice their size. I was doing fine. After leaving the shower, I returned to the bus. The engine wasn't running. It was already dark, so it was impossible to see anything inside. Roe deer turned on the flashlight on his smartphone and started complaining. Ugh, that driver took the keys again. He always does this, doesn't he? He even did it back in winter. Even after we did that exorcism, he's still pulling the same crap. What can you do? Manager Choi tells him to do it, and the guy needs to make money. But how are we supposed to sleep in June without air conditioning? Grumbling, he settled into his seat. He reclined his chair as far back as possible and pulled out a plastic bag. A 1cc insulin syringe with a suppressant. He jabbed the needle into his arm and injected it quickly. Phew! Roe deer let out a groan. Amazingly, his swollen legs quickly returned to their normal size. Even the excess hair on his face disappeared. In just a few seconds, the hulking brute had turned back into a scrawny young man. Ha! Huff! The other men did the same. It was almost miraculous how rapidly their grotesque bodies returned to normal. But instead of using the suppressant, I pulled out my kimbap and bottled water. There's no way this stuff doesn't have side effects. It's cheap. And Manager Choi Sun-soo is a notorious penny pincher. There's no way he would have given them quality suppressants. They were probably bottom tier at best, or even worse drugs. In this world, drugs are often cheaper than high-quality medicine. Ah, that's better. Sure enough, Roe deer's eyes had a glassy, far-away look. Fwoosh. He took a long drag from his e-cigarette and blew out a cloud of teal-colored mana smoke. Then he pulled out a few more syringes, jabbing several needles into his arm. Only after that did he seem fully satisfied, sprawling out in his seat. Ha, this is heaven. His face had gone completely slack, drool running down his chin. It was utterly disgusting. As I turned my head away from the nauseating sight, a hand suddenly appeared in front of me. Hey, rookie, wanna try some? A hand covered in spiky fuzz like a porcupine's quills. Hedgehog Head was holding something that looked like a cigar, exuding a sickly sweet smell that assaulted my nose. Just by looking at it, I knew it was a drug. Seriously, this guy's drowning in debt, and he's still doing drugs? I waved him off with a flat expression. I'm good. This stuff's amazing. Hardly any side effects, and it hits you right away. One puff, and you're in heaven, I swear. I'll pass. Well, suit yourself. Without hesitation, Hedgehog Head stuck the cigar in his mouth. When he lit it, the mana-infused flame quickly turned fluorescent green, and a sweet scent filled the bus, dancing around in dizzying spirals. The bus had turned into a den of drug addicts in no time. The men know. The junkies were groaning and moaning in bliss, their voices nearly driving me insane. But instead of getting off the bus, I gritted my teeth, enduring it as I bit into my kimbap, now tainted by the smell of mana smoke. This is hell, truly. My body was suffering from the stench, and my mind was corroding from the endless groaning. It was an all-out assault, both physically and mentally. It was at this moment that the conditions for the emergence of a new trait were fulfilled. Acquired the trait, Endurance. In the game, it was a simple ability that reduced all damage. It seems to work similarly in this world. The nauseating stench of drugs and the groaning sounds around me felt significantly weaker now. To be precise, it wasn't that they were weaker, but I was perceiving them less intensely. Finally, some relief. I stuffed the rest of the kimbap into my mouth. It was a good mix packed with tuna and mayo, wrapped in thin rice with a variety of vegetables. Surprisingly tasty. And all for just 1,500 won. In the world I came from, a solid tuna kimbap like this would have cost around 4,000 won. The price here was ridiculously cheap. The economy here is strange. Real estate prices were 2 to 3 times higher, but living costs were less than half. Of course, that made sense. There's no minimum wage in this world. Hourly pay is usually around 4,000 won, and if someone gets 5,000 won, people consider that generous. If it weren't for the advancements in magical science boosting the production of food and essential goods, this society would have already collapsed. Instead, South Korea's population has long passed the 100 million mark due to a population explosion. 100 million people crammed into the tiny space of South Korea. It's no wonder society's problems are boiling over. No wonder drugs are everywhere. Whatever, I just need to sleep. I didn't care where this bizarre version of Korea was headed. I just needed to look out for myself. I pulled out a cheap sleeping bag from my backpack and covered myself up to my head. The groaning of the men was still irritating, but I forced myself to sleep. The next day, everyone trudged like zombies toward the concrete structure. I'm dead tired. Park, stay away from me. You reek of rotting flesh. Haven't you seen a zombie before? You sure you're feeling all right inside? Yeah, I'm fine. If you're going to mutate, give us a heads up. It's hard to tell with you, your skin's already rotting off. I said I'm fine. Most of the guys looked pretty much the same as they did yesterday when we started. Except for one. Ugh. Hedgehog head staggered as he walked. Everyone's gaze turned cautious. Kim, are you okay? If you give up now, Kim, we're all screwed. But if you mutate, it'll be even worse. If you're going to mutate, do it while absorbing mana at least. And don't forget to let us know if it's happening. Haha, don't worry. Remember last week? I was like this then too. It was risky last time too. The suppressant hadn't completely reversed Hedgehog Head's mutation. Even last night, his hand had sprouted small spikes where there had been soft fuzz before. And now, his hair had definitely grown longer, with a metallic sheen to it. At least the tips weren't sharp yet. But in my eyes, it was only a matter of time. There were even small spikes on his face that hadn't been there before. I think you should stop here, sir. I couldn't hold back any longer and voiced my concern. The air instantly grew cold. Rodeer, with a disgruntled look on his face, snapped at me. Hey, do you know what happens when 8 people start a job and only 7 finish it? I know, but there's no turning back. Kim insisted on coming yesterday, so he has to see it through. If we don't purify all 5 zones, they won't open the gate for us. Maybe you and I could hold out, but if Kim drops out now, 2 or 3 of these guys will drop dead. The other men nodded their heads vigorously in agreement. Hedgehog Head swallowed dryly and spoke up. I'm fine. Let's keep going. Are you sure? Yes. Like I said yesterday, I'm more afraid of the debt collectors than dying. If I quit now, I won't even get paid for yesterday. I'd rather risk dying here than have them crack open my skull. His fists clenched tightly as he spoke, but his eyes wavered. That face, it reminded me of Mr. Lee, the guy with the steel jaw from the boarding house. The one I had seen on that dark street a few nights ago. My chest ached slightly, and I instinctively turned my head away. I've done enough. Anything beyond this would be meddling. It's Hedgehog Head's choice, his fate. If he insists on stepping into hell, who am I to stop him? Let's go. Rodeer, curt as ever, headed into the concrete structure. Hedgehog Head was the first to follow, putting on a forced smile and trying to chat. But he couldn't hide his trembling hands or shaking eyes. After this, how about a drink? Sounds good. Are you buying? I don't have any money. We'll split it evenly. I'm in. Kim, make sure you get properly purified. If you skip again, you're done next time. 100%. The cleaning proceeded much like yesterday. Rodeer and I took the lead, digging into the slimes. Once we cleared them out, the men collected the mana cores and sat back to absorb the contaminated mana. Hoo-ha. You. Cough cough. You eek. This is hell. Absolute hell. I should have studied harder back in school. The second contaminated zone on the second day. As I absorbed the mana, I suddenly felt a rush of cool air fill my lungs. My chest felt clear, refreshed. It didn't last long before the contaminated mana soiled the feeling again. But I immediately realized what had happened. Acquired the trait, deep breathing. This would speed up my mana absorption. Not only that, but deep breathing also increased mana recovery speed in general. A sense of relief washed over me. Looks like I'll pick up another mana-related trait at this rate. All the traits I've gained so far have been common traits, basic third-tier abilities at best. But now I've met the conditions to acquire a rare first-tier trait. Mana Core. It's one of the few first-tier traits among the common ones, and it dramatically increases mana usage and recovery efficiency. It's most beneficial for mage types, but it's still incredibly valuable for warrior types too. Grrrr. Just as I was grinning to myself, Hedgehog Head, who had been lying down near the tunnel entrance, suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Hey, Kim, you okay? Damn it. Grab the shovel. Anyone got a gun? Rodeer shot a cold look at Hedgehog Head. He calmly reached into his bag and pulled out a handgun. Click. The sound of the gun being cocked echoed heavily. Hedgehog Head raised both his hands in panic. Ugh, He was trying to say not to shoot, but he couldn't speak properly. Even his tongue had started to mutate. There was no going back now. Rodeer aimed the gun at Hedgehog Head, ready to pull the trigger. But just then, ding! The cheerful sound of the green light flicking on filled the air. The heavy tension, like a weight pressing down on us. Vanished in an instant. Hooah! Someone let out a long, relieved breath. Kim almost died there. If we had been 1 minute later, he would have been dead. Consider yourself reborn today. Ugh. Hedgehog head collapsed to the ground, babbling incoherently. The men quickly rushed to help him up. Let's get out of here. We can't stay in here any longer. Let's hurry and inject the suppressant. Because we'd absorbed the mana contamination, there was still some residue left in our bodies. That's why we needed to inject the suppressant outside. We all stumbled out of the structure, barely holding it together. Unlike yesterday, where they could afford a quick shower before injecting the suppressant, today there was no time for that. As soon as we were outside, everyone hurried to jab their syringes into their thighs or arms. I feel like I'm dying. The suppressant didn't work its usual miracle this time, especially for Hedgehog Head. While the others mostly returned to their normal states, Hedgehog Head's spikes still glistened sharply as he babbled incoherently. Kim, can you hold on? One left, only one. Yeah, just one left. Tomorrow's not two, it's just one. Hang in there. Survive and you'll get paid. You can head to the temple, make an offering, and get purified. You will live. Got it. Yeah, I'll hold on. The second night at Metropolitan Landfill No. 1. Just like yesterday, the men were soaked in drugs, sprawled out. Hedgehog Head, knowing this was his last shot, was pouring drugs into his system as if his life depended on it. He wasn't just smoking drug-laced cigarettes or using syringes. He even pulled out a green bottle and drank it straight from the neck. At first, I thought it was soju, but I soon realized it was another drug. Every sip made Hedgehog Head visibly lose his grip on reality. Time wasted. Were the drugs acting as both a suppressant and a treatment? His babbling seemed to have improved. Even the sharp tips of his spikes looked slightly duller. But at the end of the day, drugs were just drugs. A temporary fix at best. I glanced at his reflection in the bus window, his distorted face gleaming eerily, then drifted off to sleep. Finally, the last day, not even an hour into absorbing mana in the 5th zone, Hedgehog Head started convulsing. Herc! What spilled from his mouth wasn't just blood. It was a thick black liquid, full of sand-like black spikes. His mutation had fully begun. Damn it. Kim, get a grip. It's almost over. This is the last one. Just a little longer. Anyone have holy water? Holy water. The men frantically rummaged through Hedgehog Head's belongings, but all they found was one thing. An empty green bottle. Damn it. Shit. Anyone got holy water? Even the lowest grade stuff will do. Anyone? No one responded. I chuckled inwardly. I could see the truth behind the desperate calls for holy water. Wanna bet? At least half the guys here probably have some holy water on them. But they're not giving it up. Why would they? Even if Kim survives today, he won't live long. He's either going to die soon or end up a full-blown junkie. Who would waste expensive holy water on someone like that? Someone who's not even family. Rodeer, who was unconsciously stroking his own leg, was thinking the same thing. That's human nature. Honestly, if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't offer up my holy water either. That single bottle of holy water might be the one thing that saves my life. You're trash. I'm trash too. Once I accepted that, it became easier to bear. Still, I decided to help in my own way. Maybe he'll survive. Maybe he won't. Take him outside. Huh, rookie. The men stared at me, confused. I gave a small nod of my head. I'll cover for him. I can hold on for a while longer. Take him out and wait. If I can't hold out, I'll call you in to switch. I was offering to absorb the contaminated mana alone. The door would remain open, so some of the mana would leak out, but not too much. The men's faces lit up. Are you sure? Will you be okay? If something happens to you, I'll be fine. I'll call for help if I can't handle it. Promise. You have to call. Just say the word and we'll be back. They practically sprinted outside, dragging Hedgehog Head with them. He was flailing, his spikes growing longer and sharper. His odds were 50-50. If he held out, he'd live. If not, he'd mutate and become a contamination creature. Rodeer stared hard at me. Why are you doing this? Who knows? I shrugged lightly. We'd only met recently. Whether he lived or died shouldn't have mattered to me. But the thought of him dying right in front of me left a sour feeling in my chest. So, I decided to help. I could absorb contaminated mana several times over without it affecting me. I wouldn't mutate or die, no matter how much I pushed myself. I knew that for certain. Hoo. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. With deep breathing and mana absorption, I could take in a massive amount of contaminated mana. The traits I had selected at the moment were deep breathing, mana absorption, contamination resistance, endurance, vigor, wound recovery. It was surprisingly easy to handle. I could easily purify this entire zone on my own. Of course, I'd need some serious rest afterward, but it was manageable. Beside me, Rodir was struggling as well. He must have felt the need to compete with me. Give it up. A crow can't keep up with a crane. You're going to tear yourself apart trying. Gah! And just as I expected, he did. About halfway through absorbing the contaminated mana, Rodir let out a long scream. His legs were twisting. They were already swollen to twice their size, and now they were growing longer, snake-like, with an extra joint trying to form. This was his limit. Gasping for breath, Rodir pulled a small glass bottle from his bag. Pop! He bit off the cork and poured the liquid onto his legs. The liquid was as clear as water, but seemed to shimmer like starlight. A cloud of white steam rose, and something miraculous happened. The legs that had been lengthening and twisting suddenly snapped back to normal. Not just normal. They reverted to the way they were before we even entered the first zone. Back to how they were when I first met him at the office. Ha ha. Rodir panted heavily. He tossed the empty bottle aside and avoided meeting my eyes. Then, silence. Rodir kept his mouth shut, and I pretended not to notice, focusing on my breathing. A while later, suddenly, my heart began to ache, like I'd been stabbed, but the pain melted away in an instant. My heart pounded, sending a rush of heat through my entire body. It had finally arrived. I clenched my fists, acquired the trait, Mana Core. I'd now obtained everything I could from this landfill. It's over, Rodir murmured, his face pale. The green light was shining brightly again. The ventilation system roared to life, clearing the air and sending a gentle breeze through the space. The day's work was done. Unfortunately, there was no time to rest. Groar! A monstrous roar echoed from beyond the open door. Ah! Help! Rodir! Rookie! Help us! Terrified screams followed. Rodir's face hardened. Shit! He bolted outside. Whew! So, it's come to this. I grabbed my discarded shovel and followed him. When I stepped out into the tunnel, I saw it. A massive hedgehog-like creature standing under the flickering fluorescent light, and Rodir flying through the air, blood spraying from his body. No! A scream filled with horror and despair echoed through the tunnel. The men were watching from a distance, too far away to do anything. No one seemed to be dead or seriously injured, at least not yet. But it was only a matter of time. Kiki-kikik, kiki-kikikik. The hedgehog mutant let out a grotesque laugh. It was towering, at least a head taller than me. Its entire body was covered in thick muscle, and instead of hair, metallic spines extended from its head, glinting ominously. I paid close attention to its arms, especially its fists. What level is this thing? Well, its trapezius, biceps, and triceps bulged as if they were about to explode. The forearms looked surprisingly weak. Its lower arms were out of proportion with the rest of its body, making it look cartoonish, like something you'd see in a comic book, with an overdeveloped upper body and small, childlike hands. In other words, it was a level 1 mutant. Because the base body of Hedgehog Head wasn't particularly strong, it hadn't reached level 2. Phew! Clang! I tossed the shovel aside and stepped forward. Kiki-kiki-kik. The hedgehog mutant's beady eyes darted toward me. Run away! Rodir, who was pinned against the wall and coughing up blood, shouted weakly. Rookie! Crush that thing! We're counting on you! Just kill it already! The men who only knew how to run their mouths cheered me on. Kai-ai! The hedgehog mutant charged at me. Boom! The sound was terrifying. The wide tunnel seemed to shrink under the bulk of the creature as it rushed at me. I bit down hard on my lower lip. I had absorbed mana contamination to the brink of my limits, but I hadn't purified or processed it yet. I was still at level 0. If I fought this thing head-on in my current state, I'd lose for sure. But the 10,000 hours I spent playing Arcane Soul hadn't been for nothing. I quickly came up with a solution. First, I tensed my entire body. My muscles tightened, my neck stiffened, and blood vessels bulged in my eyes. A drop of sweat formed on my forehead as the world slowed down around me. This was the state of hyperfocus. With sharp, glaring eyes and a clenched fist, I focused on just one thing. Remove wound recovery. That's a trait that would be more useful after the fight. Remove vigor. Same reasoning, better for a long-term fight. But right now, I needed a burst of strength. Next, I summoned new traits. Activate strength, mana core. My heart pounded hard. Heat surged through my body, and I felt the mana rushing toward me. Lud. A thrilling, fiery sensation shot up to my brain. My muscles swelled with power. The intense surge was almost enough to knock me out, but I held on, barely managing to stay in control. I had activated strength to amplify my physical power, endurance to reduce all physical and magical damage, mana absorption to consume mana at will, deep breathing to increase mana recovery speed, mana core to enhance my mana and manage it efficiently, and lastly, the final lock and trigger, contamination resistance. Come at me, I roared as I charged forward. The hedgehog mutant and I collided, both of us relying solely on brute strength, throwing ourselves at each other with no finesse or efficient moves. Gurk. I was the one who went flying. I smashed into the wall with a thud and let out a groan. Damn it. Let's get out of here. Somebody save us. The men instantly turned tail and ran. Rodeer, still collapsed across from me, looked at me with a pained expression. Kick. The hedgehog mutant burst into laughter again. HMPH. I snorted and got back to my feet. Then I made a switch. I replaced endurance with the new trait I had just obtained, toughness. I hadn't charged in recklessly just to get hit. The toughness trait only reduced physical damage, but it reduced much more than endurance, and, more importantly, it met the condition for acquiring a certain trait I was after. Let's do this, bastard. I charged straight at it again. I drove my fist into the mutant's lower abdomen. Keek. It was a solid hit. The hedgehog mutant staggered back a few steps, a look of disbelief on its face. But only for a moment. Grah! It roared and threw a counterpunch at me. The fist enlarged rapidly in front of my eyes. There was no time to dodge. I gritted my teeth and raised my left forearm at a right angle to block the blow. Crack! Wah! My arm broke. Stars exploded in my vision, and searing pain shot down my spine like ice-cold lightning. I had expected it, but the pain was unbearable. My body instinctively wanted to curl up, but I refused to let it. If I backed down now, there was only one possible outcome: death. If I didn't want to die, I had to move forward. If I wanted to survive in this hellish world, I had no choice but to keep fighting. I screamed as I threw my fist again. Die! I poured every ounce of frustration into that punch. I released the pent-up anger, the confusion, the despair I'd felt since being thrown into this world. All of it exploded at once. Lud. The hedgehog mutant's body shuddered violently. Though I had struck its stomach, its whole upper body shook, and its head jerked back. But that was as far as I got. Grah! The hedgehog mutant swung another wide punch. A clumsy, inefficient attack. But I wasn't any better. I was just a former laborer who did grunt work and played games. What skills did I have to dodge something like that? Boom! The blow landed with a deafening crash, and my arm broke again. I nearly blacked out, but I gritted my teeth and held on. I knew that, as someone who hadn't even reached level 1 yet, going toe-to-toe with a level 1 mutant like this was beyond foolish. But I also knew something else. Stupid, reckless, and seemingly impossible situations like this are exactly when traits get triggered. Arg! I swung my fist again. I hit it once and got hit in return. Graah! Our roars echoed through the concrete tunnel. It was a brutal, primal fight. A clash of raw power, and I was losing. My left arm hung uselessly at my side, and my right fist, unprotected by any armor, was bloodied and torn. But I kept moving forward. Despite the pain, despite everything, I continued my charge, not thinking about anything else, focusing solely on the hedgehog mutant in front of me. I swung my fist once more. There was only one thing I needed: strength. More strength. Stronger than before. As I endured the excruciating pain, I swung my fist again. And that's when it happened. A strange sensation shot through my right arm. A scorching heat, as if it were being branded with a hot iron. At the same time, an icy chill, like a bucket of cold water, had been dumped over me. For a moment, I thought I saw a flash of blue lightning before my eyes. From my heart, from my entire body, from my mind, an unfamiliar sensation surged through me like a fountain. Crunch! My fist buried itself in the mutant's abdomen. This time, the impact felt completely different. Erg! The hedgehog mutant coughed up blood. It was a solid hit. The hedgehog mutant looked at me with eyes full of disbelief. This was the power of the trait, mutant muscle. A trait that can only be acquired when both mana core and strength are active. Die, Graya. But the hedgehog mutant wasn't about to back down. With renewed fury, it charged at me again, and we resumed trading punches. I coughed up blood. Actually, more than just blood, I was taking some serious hits. My face, my stomach, every part of my body was aching. One of my legs was broken, and my eyelids were so swollen I could barely see. Eek, Graya. But I kept charging. Again and again, I threw myself at it. With blood rising in my throat and my heart pounding like it was about to explode, I felt it. I felt the birth of a new trait. Mutant body. Just as my strength had been replaced by mutant muscle, my toughness was now replaced by mutant body. Now, I was no longer at a disadvantage. My broken left arm had already healed. Though my body was slightly smaller, I was standing toe-to-toe with the hedgehog mutant, trading blow for blow. Superhuman. I think I heard someone say. Or maybe I didn't. I was too focused on the hedgehog mutant to care. Graya. The mutant roared and drove its fist into my chest. I couldn't block it in time. Blood. A surge of blood rose in my throat, threatening to spill out. But I swallowed it down and drove my fist into the mutant's lower abdomen. The same spot I'd been targeting over and over. Not enough. In every stat, I was the inferior version of this thing. Attack power, defense, raw strength. Even the wild savagery that overwhelmed any rational thought, it was superior in all those areas. The final lock had to be broken. The last trigger needed to be pulled. Whew. I took a deep breath. Would it work? Would everything go according to plan? I had to believe. Believe in the 10,000 hours I'd invested. The time I'd poured into Arcane Soul. Remove contamination resistance. For a moment, everything went silent. It felt like the world had stopped. Then, slowly, my entire bloodstream began to reverse. Thump, thump, thump. My heart pounded, but not in rhythm, completely offbeat. My ventricles became atria, my left side became the right, and my breathing stopped altogether. Gurg. An indescribable pain ripped through me. My brain felt like it was melting from the heat. My fingers and toes itched unbearably, and my muscles felt like they were being torn apart fiber by fiber. And then, my body began to change. I started to grow rapidly, so much that I now towered over the hedgehog mutant. My size, my bulk, my muscles, everything had expanded. Kick. Sensing something was wrong, the hedgehog mutant tried to retreat, but my mutation was one step ahead. Before it could react, I swung my massive arm and grabbed the mutant by the throat. I lifted it easily and slammed it to the ground. Boom. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It was like a thunderclap. The entire concrete structure seemed to shake, and the puddles of stagnant water scattered across the floor exploded outward. Ki-ake. A scream filled with agony. I slammed it down again, and again, and again. The tide of the battle had completely turned. The hedgehog mutant writhed and screamed, trying desperately to stand, but I didn't give it a single moment to recover. I knew its weaknesses. I knew its strengths. I knew everything about it. The hedgehog mutant only had one real trait. Spiked hair. A level 1 mutant like this, with mismatched traits, abilities, and combat style, couldn't hope to stand against me, a fully synergized set of 6 traits. I was a level 1 superhuman now. Not a warrior class superhuman, but a mutant class, having forsaken my humanity to become a mutant myself. I'd unlocked a new stage of power. Crack, crack, crack. Behind me, I heard Rodeer's teeth chattering uncontrollably. Monster. Yeah, that's how it must look. Once someone mutates, they can never return to being human. That's common knowledge. But I had a secret to rely on. Fwak. I dealt a final blow, confirming the hedgehog mutant's death before stepping back. Rodeer, paralyzed by fear, began crawling away, dragging himself across the floor. He probably thought that, after killing the monster, I would come for him next. But I wasn't interested in him. Instead, I focused on myself. This was my current trait set. Mana absorption, deep breathing, mana core, mutant muscle, mutant body, mutant. The key traits were contamination resistance and mutant. When I removed contamination resistance, I pulled the trigger that activated my mutation, pushing my body over the edge into a full transformation. I'd crossed the Rubicon. I was no longer human. I had become a mutant. But what if I tried removing the mutant trait? Would I still remain a mutant? Gulp. I swallowed hard and restored the traits. I replaced mutant with contamination resistance. I replaced mutant muscle and mutant body with strength and toughness. And finally, I switched out mana absorption, deep breathing, and mana core for wound recovery, endurance, and vigor. Crack, crack. I could hear strange sounds coming from all over my body. I was shrinking. My massive, hulking form was returning to its original, leaner shape. The skin that had morphed into something inhuman began to regain its normal color. It was like watching time rewind. The world no longer appeared red. The dim light of the fluorescent bulbs, the shadowy concrete structure, it all looked the same as before. Bingo! My calculations were spot on. Huff huff. Rodir, gasping for breath, stared at the me that had reverted back to a human form. Rodir's eyes trembled. This can't be real. His gaze then locked onto my face as if nailed there. A superhuman? You're really a superhuman? His tone had changed a bit. I shook my head. Not yet. If I wanted, I could summon the mutant trait and instantly become a superhuman, but the after effects would be brutal. My whole body felt like it had been beaten to a pulp. The dizziness was so intense that it felt like the world was spinning. Even with the vigor trait, I'd probably need several days of complete rest. Suppressing the urge to collapse right then and there, I walked over to the hedgehog mutant's corpse. I placed my hand on its chest and temporarily activated the extraction trait. With a swift pull, I yanked something out from between the mushy ribs. A small stone, about the size of a pinky finger. It was glassy and translucent, with an oily sheen, like a strange film floating on water. A mana core. As it was from a level 1 creature, it held some value. Not life-changing, but still worth something. What is that? It's over. The mutant's dead. Wait, it's really dead. We're alive. The men started creeping back, cautiously approaching the corpse. When they saw the lifeless body sprawled on the ground, each of them stared in disbelief, mouths hanging open. They glanced from the corpse to me, their faces a mix of astonishment and awe. No one here was clueless. Rookie, you did this? Holy, you're amazing. A guy like you in a place like this. They all clearly thought I was a superhuman. To be fair, only a superhuman could kill a level 1 mutant. Sure, if they had a high-caliber shotgun or an automatic rifle, they might stand a chance. But they had neither. I didn't bother correcting them. It's not like I was going to see them again after today. Explaining that I wasn't a superhuman would just be a waste of breath. Only Rodir quietly approached and whispered something to the men, likely telling them I said I wasn't a superhuman yet. Let's head back. Yes, right away. Everyone, let's go. What about it? One of the men pointed to the body. Another man gave a bitter smile. If we tell the government, they'll take care of it. Things like this happen from time to time. Right, I figured. HMPH. Excuse me, mind if I take a few of the spines? Spines? You mean the hair? Yes, there are collectors who'll pay for stuff like that. Go ahead, help yourself. The men grinned and quickly gathered around the corpse. They grabbed the shovels they'd discarded earlier and began hacking at the mutant's head. Clang, clang. The mutant's body, now devoid of mana, had become limp and weak. The once steel-like spines had turned soft, like decayed flesh. It didn't take much effort to pry them off. Even Rodir got up and quietly plucked a few of the metallic spines from the corpse. From what I knew, they didn't hold much value, but apparently, there were people out there who collected them. Rest in peace, old man. Rodir pulled a small hip flask from his pocket and pressed it to the corpse's mouth. A murky brown liquid dribbled out. The other men followed suit, shoving cheap cigarettes and crushed candy into the dead mutant's mouth. Kim, may you rest in peace. Don't feel pain where you're going. Take care. May the blessings of our ancestors be with you. Each man offered his own token of respect. Watching them made a bitter taste rise in my mouth. This wasn't a formal ritual of mourning. These were the same men who had just been looting the corpse with smiles on their faces. Now they were waving the body off as if it were nothing. But I wasn't one to judge. I'd started the looting by extracting the mana core. With one last glance at the body, I turned away. No one said a word as we walked. The damp air and the oppressive atmosphere hung over us like a heavy blanket. Finally, we arrived at the exit. The door opened, and instead of the dim light of flickering fluorescent bulbs, bright sunlight poured in like a flood. The fresh air was so clean and crisp that I instinctively flared my nostrils. Hooah! Finally, we're out. I thought we were dead. That took forever and eternity. We survived. Anyone up for drinks? Didn't you have to pay off to 100,000 this month? I'll just take another cleaning job tomorrow. They won't cut me open. They'll squeeze as much out of me as they can, like they always do. Are we celebrating with pork belly today? Are you nuts? Do I look like I have money for that? I'll buy you all some beef stew at least. Beef stew again, huh? If you don't want it, suit yourself. We didn't even go back to the office. We just knocked on the door, and the government worker who had let us in that morning came out, walking lazily as ever. You're already done? Huh, looks like someone's missing. He mutated and died. Inside. Yes. No other casualties? No. Lucky for you. The last team all died. Road Deer's face twisted in irritation. What a thing to say. The government worker looked bored. Well, I guess I'll have to go check inside, all right. Hand in your keycards and you can go. Stop by the decontamination room on your way out. Sure. Thanks for your hard work. Yeah, hard work. The guy was clearly annoyed that he'd have more work to do. He lazily took the keycards and disappeared back into the office. We stopped by the decontamination room to pass through the Manhwa purifiers and contamination scanners before heading to the parking lot. There, our bus was waiting, parked where it had been before. The driver, who had been napping in the driver's seat, woke up with a start when Road Deer opened the door. Huh, Road Deer, sir. Done already? I thought you'd be a few more hours. Yeah, well, things happened. You must have had a rough day. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, huh. Someone's missing. What about Hedgehog? You know what happened. Oh, I get it. Damn. The driver rubbed the back of his neck. Then, without another word, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a green soju bottle, putting it straight to his lips. Was he really going to drink before driving? But no one said a word about it. Hey, Park, don't hog it all. Share some with us too. I've got nothing left for you guys. Come on, don't be like that. We're all dying here. You want me to call the cops on you? Damn it, fine. 1 sip each. The men passed the bottle around, taking swigs from it. Obviously, 1 bottle wasn't enough for everyone. Grumbling, the driver pulled out 2 more bottles of soju and handed them around. Ah, now I feel alive again. Park, you're a lifesaver. Damn, you even drink the good stuff. What did you spike this soju with? Why work hard if not to drink well? Now hang on tight, we're about to head off. Rookie, not drinking. The driver gave me a puzzled look when I shook my head to decline. Before I could even respond, the other men chimed in. Hey, Rookie, are you kidding me? You call him Rookie? That's Junior to you. He's a future superhuman. You better show some respect. If it wasn't for Junior here, we'd all be dead right now. Junior? Superhuman? The driver's expression turned to disbelief. Wait, seriously? You're not messing with me? No joke. We all saw it with our own eyes. I mean, look at us, we wouldn't be here otherwise. I didn't want to be part of the conversation anymore. I just slumped into a seat at the back of the bus and closed my eyes, tuning out the noise. I could feel the driver's curious glances in the rearview mirror. Vroom. The diesel engine sputtered to life, sounding like an old farm tractor. The bus began to rattle and move, slowly pulling out of the parking lot. Since it was a weekday afternoon, the highway along the Han River was relatively clear. We sped along with no traffic, making it back to the labor office in just 30 minutes. Thanks to the others, I was the first to meet with the manager. The labor office manager, Choi Sun-soo, sat behind his desk, his sharp eyes fixed on me the moment I stepped in. I heard there was an incident. Yes, one of the men died. I was informed by Wan-il earlier. Kim Min-soo, he loved his booze, but he was diligent and cheerful. Such a shame. The manager bowed his head briefly in a show of respect. His face was grim, his brows furrowed with concern, but something about it felt off, like crocodile tears. And sure enough, when he raised his head again, that look of solemnity vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Now then, let's talk business. His voice turned cold, the tone of a businessman. The living must go on. Agreed, I said, showing no particular emotion. I wasn't any different. I've already received word from the government office. You cleared all 5 zones. That's correct. As you know, all loot belongs to the finder, and the standard purification fee is 10 million won per zone. That totals 50 million won. But after my 20% cut, the remaining 40 million is divided among the 8 of you. Normally, that would mean I'd be giving you 5 million. But given today's special circumstances, we'll have to make an exception. The manager gestured to the side. Click. A safe opened, and 2 fat stacks of bills floated out, almost dancing in the air as they landed neatly in front of me. Telekinesis? Or maybe magic. 2 bundles of 50,000 won bills, 10 million won in total, set on the desk before me. Please, take it. The manager gestured toward the money. This is your share, Warrior Kim. 10 million won. A small fortune, even in the world I came from. I reached out with trembling hands and grabbed the bundles of cash. The manager gave me a sly smile and waved his hand again. Even though I've heard you're a future superhuman, I can't treat you the same as the other workers. Warrior Kim, normally, I take a 20% cut, but for you, I'll only take 10%. No, 5%. The same applies to this payout as well. The safe shook once more. HUD. 2 more stacks of bills floated out, each featuring King Sejong's face. 2 bundles. 200,000 won. That's a little extra. I took the money, but I couldn't help but blurt out, "This seems like too much." As I said it, the manager gave me a wide grin. I added a little extra. It wouldn't feel right to split hairs down to the last one and make it awkward, would it? I don't mind, but please, just take it. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. As long as we keep doing business, you'll never be disappointed financially. The manager smiled in a way that was meant to be reassuring. It was the same kind of smile he gave me yesterday, only now it seemed even more convincing, more trustworthy. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Trust me, I'll take care of everything. Those were the kinds of promises people made right before screwing you over. I had to admit, the manager wasn't much different from the others I'd met. He even changed the way he spoke. Before, he mixed informal speech and respect. Now, he was strictly polite. Why? Because he wanted something, obviously. He wanted to use me. I concealed my growing wariness behind a polite smile. All right, then, with the attention you're giving me, I'd be happy to continue working with you. Ha ha ha. Thank you. Hearing that from you makes me feel like I have an army on my side. You must be hungry. I know a great place nearby. How about we grab a bite and discuss some ideas over dinner? It was clear what he wanted. Dinner and drinks would inevitably lead to talks of contracts. I shook my head. Sorry, but I've got some urgent matters to take care of. Oh, then when? Not sure yet, but I'll come by soon. All right, I understand. I'll give you a call later then. Thank you for understanding. Sure, I'd have to write up a contract eventually, but not until I was completely in my right mind. Not until I became a superhuman. If the manager tried to pull any tricks then, it would be over for him. I appreciated him lowering the commission and giving me extra, but business was business. Just because he threw me a little extra cash didn't mean I'd sign away my freedom. After a firm handshake, I left the labor office. I hummed a little tune. Maybe it was because, for the first time in my life, I was holding over 1.2 million won in cash. Realizing it, I let out a chuckle. Guess I'm not so different after all. Someone had died, mutated into a grotesque monster, then met a horrifying end. But no one cared about that. They only cared about the loot, the money, the purification fees. And I was no different. Honestly, I had no right to judge the manager or the others. In fact, maybe I was better suited to this cruel world than I realized. HMPH. Doesn't matter. My own life was far more precious than some guy whose name I barely knew. I just needed to survive. Clenching my fist, I steeled my resolve. I would survive in this hellish world. Junior. A voice called out as I stepped into the waiting area. The others in the room bowed slightly when they saw me. I could feel their eyes on my bag, a bag stuffed full of monocores and cash. I knew exactly what was in their eyes. Greed and envy. Ugh, I feel like I'm dying. I threw myself onto the old, worn-out bed. The bed creaked, as if it were screaming in pain. I wasn't any different. Every muscle in my body ached, and each movement felt like my muscles were crying out in agony. The world swayed, as if trying to knock me down. Switching traits isn't a cure-all. The fact that my body changed when I switched traits was an amazing advantage. The problem was the side effects. It wasn't an issue when I switched off traits like strength or vigor, but the aftershock of removing the mutant trait was hitting me late. If I removed the mutant trait at a higher level, it might kill me. Still, just the fact that I could return to being a normal human from a mutant was incredible. It might even save my life a couple more times in the future. With that thought in mind, I slowly closed my eyes. A sensation of sinking into a swamp overcame me, and soon, pitch black darkness reached out for me. Ugh, I slept like I was dead. The worst part was that even though I was asleep, my mind was half awake. Get out, you son of a bitch. Why the hell is this happening to me? Even the doctor said, "You said you'd help." I don't care anymore. Despite the state of my mind, I could hear the noises, the usual sounds of life in the Gashawon. TL note: Gashawon refers to a type of small, budget accommodation. They are called that way because they are typically rented by people trying to pass a civil service exam. Someone was fighting. The voices were familiar, but in my half-asleep state, I couldn't quite place them. They came and went, moving away from my focus and then returning again. How much time passed? Suddenly, a piercing, chilling scream tore through the air, like a blade slicing into my eardrums. A-H-H-H-H. It forced my ears open, driving the sound straight into my brain, making it impossible to stay asleep. I jolted upright. It was dawn. The windowless Gashawon room was dark, but my smartphone by the bedside displayed the time, 5 a.m. What's going on? What happened? Why the hell are they screaming at this hour? Let us sleep. Voices from the neighboring room spoke out, people poking their heads out to complain. But soon, everyone fell silent. Ha! A long, low groan, like air escaping, filled with despair and terror, resonated through the hall. It wasn't just an ordinary scream or groan. The metallic sound of it was so eerie and unsettling that the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I instinctively slammed open my door and ran outside. The others were doing the same. Some people were even holding kitchen knives, while others clutched baseball bats. Where? The management office. It came from the office. The office. Did the manager get stabbed? The management office was right by the entrance, a place where you couldn't avoid being seen when coming and going. Just as we gathered outside the office, the door creaked open, and someone stepped out. His eyes were glazed over, saliva drooled from his mouth, and a steel jaw, misaligned and grotesque, jutted from his face. His teeth were jagged gears, like someone who had been experimented on by a mad scientist. In his hand was a knife, stained with blood. Damn it. Holy shit. Through the open door, we could see the landlady lying on the floor. Blood was pooling around her body, spreading quickly. Her body trembled, but the amount of blood she had lost was already fatal. Unless a priest from the temple arrived to use holy power, there was no saving her. He, the man with the steel jaw, Mr. Lee, giggled as he looked at the knife in his hand and waved it around playfully. Back off. Get back. The Gashawon residents grimaced. That bastard's on drugs. He was always crazy, but now he's high too. Let's just step aside. We're not the police. What are we going to do? Arrest him? Nobody wanted to risk getting stabbed over this. There was a shared understanding. Stay out of it. Don't get involved. I clenched my fist, staring at the steel-jawed man. Should I take him down? I could. No matter how high he was or how dangerous the knife looked, he was still just an ordinary human. Even though I wasn't a level 1 yet, with my strength and bright eyes traits, I could throw a few pieces of furniture and charge at him. He wouldn't stand a chance. But there was no reason to. I glanced at the fallen landlady inside the office. She had it coming. After all, she'd sold Mr. Lee's jaw and teeth to some unlicensed quack because he'd missed a few rent payments, and she thought she could make some money out of it. This was her karma catching up with her. She should have just filed for eviction instead of doing something so reckless. It was unfortunate she got stabbed, but honestly, Mr. Lee was the real victim here. Maybe Mr. Lee was what my future could look like. Without thinking any further, I turned and stepped aside to let him pass. But Mr. Lee's actions were completely unpredictable. Instead of quietly walking away, he let out a roar and charged straight at me. Die. This bastard. He was only a few meters away. Too close. At that moment, my eyes caught sight of something. A fire extinguisher, covered in dust, was mounted on the wall. Crack. It was bolted to the wall, but my brute strength easily ripped it free. Thwack. I swung it with all my might. The extinguisher smashed directly into the side of his steel jaw. Blood. A satisfying impact echoed as it hit his left temple. His already dazed eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, dropping the knife with a clatter. One hit was all it took, knocking out a drugged-up alcoholic. Easy. Holy crap, that was amazing. I heard Mr. Lee used to be quite a fighter when he was young. Of course. It's Warrior Kim. He's living up to his name. He's not dead, is he? No, he's alive. I checked his carotid artery. It was pulsing steadily. Feigning calm, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. I'd been a little worried. No matter what, I didn't want to be responsible for killing a person. It was different from the hedgehog mutant, which had already transformed into a monster. But Mr. Lee, he was still human. Shouldn't we call the police? A young woman in her early 20s asked, trembling. A bald man scoffed. The police? You think they'll come even if we call? They've already given up on this area beyond the neighborhood park. But someone died. You know how many people die in Korea every day. Sure, call the cops if you want, but be warned they'll make your life hell. Sometimes the person who reports the crime ends up being treated like the criminal. No way. It's true. I've seen it myself. The cops are more focused on their stats than anything else. And hey, go ahead and call, but wait a little. Why? Instead of answering, the bald man entered the office. He clicked his tongue at the sight of the sprawled landlady and pulled a thin wire from his pocket. Another man shook his head in disapproval. Come on, Mr. Young. A person's dead, and you're really doing this? Does a corpse feed me? If you don't like it, go back to your room and pretend you didn't see anything. But don't take your share later. Now, I didn't say that. The bald man went over to the safe in the corner with his wire. He skillfully inserted it into the lock, and within moments, the safe clicked open. Gulp. Someone swallowed nervously. The safe door swung open, revealing several stacks of cash inside. The bald man spat on the floor. Hot. She was so greedy about collecting rent, but all she had was 600 grand. 600. That's it. Damn. I should have taken it all for myself. The bald man scanned the crowd. It was loud enough that everyone in the Gashuan had gathered here. Though the Gashuan was small, it was packed like a chicken coop. At least 20 people were present. If we split it equally, each person wouldn't even get 30,000 won. I waved my hand dismissively. I'm good. Oh, come on. Warrior Kim, you should take the biggest share. I'll just consider it payment for my rent. It was already nerve-wracking enough that someone had died, but now they were casually cracking open the safe, dividing the dead woman's money, like it was no big deal. Even scarier was the fact that everyone here thought this was perfectly normal. Even the young woman who had suggested calling the police was now staring at the money, with greedy eyes. I need to get out of here. No, I needed to leave this entire neighborhood. Wouldn't it be better to move somewhere in the center of Seoul? Or at least to a middle-class area? Maybe near that neighborhood park where I'd collected traits a few days ago. I'm leaving. Consider me out of this. HMPH, fine. Just make sure to cover your tracks. We don't want the Iron Fist Gang getting involved. The Iron Fist Gang? Yeah, they've taken over this area. The boss has a nasty temper, so getting mixed up with them is a headache. I'm sure the landlady was paying them protection money too. The young woman, who had been listening, asked worriedly. Then, shouldn't we leave the money alone? If you're scared, don't take it. That's not what I meant. We don't know anything. We just woke up and found her dead. The Iron Fist Gang will deal with the rest. As long as they keep getting their payments, they won't care who owns the building. As for Mr. Lee, the bald man locked the safe and glanced at the fallen steel-jawed man. The residents exchanged knowing glances. We'll take care of him. Do that. The young woman, clearly frightened, backed away, clutching her few bills of cash, and ran up the stairs. The bald man clicked his tongue. Guess she won't be around by morning. You think she'll talk? No way. What would she gain? She's an accomplice too. True. We don't know each other after today. Understood, Warrior Kim? Understood. I returned to my room. I didn't have much to pack, just a few old clothes and some odds and ends. But I had my bag, a bag filled with 1.2 million won in cash, over 100 level 0 monocores, and 1 level 1 monocore. As I hefted the heavy bag, a chill ran down my spine. I slept like a rock last night. I'd been so tired that I hadn't slept deeply. Even though my mind was half awake, I hadn't been aware of my surroundings. What if someone had broken into my room? What if they'd quietly stabbed me in the heart? I would have died without making a sound. The image of the bald man picking the lock flashed before my eyes. He was probably a petty thief in his past. There was no way he was the only person in this Gashuan or this alley who knew how to pick locks. And these people? They wouldn't hesitate to kill someone for a chance at pocketing 1 million won. This place is dangerous. I needed to leave, not just for my mental health but for my life. I grabbed my bag and quickly made my way down the hallway. The residents were still gathered in front of the office, whispering among themselves. Strangled with a rope. Maybe we should just ask Dr. Park. Cybernetic limbs are better than a corpse. The landlady's daughter, her younger brother, Iron Fist's Kim Chokwan. Nobody paid attention to me as I walked by. Well, except for one person, who briefly glanced at my bag before hurrying inside to grab whatever belongings they had left behind. At this point, I couldn't even muster a laugh. Sigh. I walked down to the park where I'd collected traits a few days ago and sat on a bench. The sky was slowly beginning to brighten. The long shadows stretched out like the claws of a witch, scraping across the world. I have to move. Sitting here aimlessly wasn't going to help. I'd already made a promise to myself. I'd survive. To do that, I had to get through today and keep moving forward toward tomorrow. I had money and abilities. What reason was there to look so miserable? Compared to the time I got scammed out of my deposit and ended up living in this Gashuan, this was nothing. Sure, I had some credit card debt, but I could pay it off by going mining again. Let's go. Now that I'd escaped the Gashuan, I needed to find a new place to live. I headed straight to the real estate office I'd checked out beforehand.